Hi, my name is Jared and this is Horror Obsession. Today, I want to talk about the Halloween franchise, the highest grossing horror franchise of all time, and also probably the most convoluted. This series is filled with remakes, reboots, soft reboots, restarts, movies that ignore everything past the second, movies that ignore everything past the first, and movies which literally have nothing to do with any of the others. Looking at you, Halloween 3. Let's try to untangle this labyrinth of sequels, shall we? Halloween starts with the fantastic original, Halloween, not to be confused with Halloween or Halloween, however. After Halloween comes Halloween 2, not to be confused with Halloween 2, but also it's important to remember the David Gordon Green trilogy ignores Halloween 2 and goes straight to Halloween. So the sequel to Halloween was titled Halloween? That's right, and the sequel to that is, of course, Halloween Kills. Unless you mean Halloween, then the sequel is Halloween 2, but not that Halloween 2, this Halloween 2, which leads into the return of Michael Myers. That is, of course, except for Halloween 20 years later, aka H2O, which directly follows Halloween 2 and ignores the return, the revenge, and the curse of Michael Myers. Got it? Here's an infographic to help you idiots figure it out. Alright, now that we've got the storyline sorted out, how do these movies actually compare to one another? Let's find out. Number 13, and the worst movie in the franchise, Halloween Resurrection. Halloween Resurrection is terrible. It is not only a bad Halloween movie, it is just a bad movie. This is the Jason X of the Halloween franchise. Which is not good. This movie suffers from atrocious acting, a convoluted yet also simplistically stupid storyline, moral grandstanding, buffoonish dialogue which thinks it's intelligent.
Say something smart.
Existence precedes essence.
The movie tries to have a theme and function as a meta-horror commentary, just like every slasher in the years following the massive success of Scream. But unlike Scream, Resurrection has nothing interesting to say. The plot is essentially, Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks bring a bunch of people into Michael Myers' house and put cameras on them, with a plan to stream it live so they can become famous. It is free to watch and there are no ads, so it's basically the underpants gnome South Park joke about missing the middle step which leads to profit. Busta Rhymes sounds like he is improvising his dialogue.
This is to us for successfully, let me give you a little more, putting together something collectively so ingenious as a team and a duo that we should definitely be able to secure a lot of food on the table for ourselves as long as everything goes as nicely as it's going right now.
And the movie veers solidly into destructively bad territory. There is no doubt in my mind this is the worst movie in the franchise. Number 12, The Revenge of Michael Myers, aka Halloween 5. Right away you can tell this is going to be a bad movie. They open showing a gratuitous amount of the last movie, not because the script was horrible and the movie was shit so they needed to pad the screen time. Why would you say that? Revenge follows the little girl from the last movie having psychic visions to help them catch Michael Myers, which is definitely not copied from the Christopher Walken movie Dead Zone. Revenge includes such gems as Michael driving around running people over like an 85-year-old with cataracts, and Michael driving this woman to the corner store to buy cigarettes. Yes, that is the thing that happens in this movie. Oh, how far you've fallen, Michael.
Look how they massacred my boy.
When your slasher is taking his victims on errands around town, you know you done fucked up. This movie is exhausting, boring, and worst of all, not scary in the least. Number 11, Halloween 2, 2009, aka the Rob Zombie sequel. I dislike the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. I think they're trashy, poorly shot, poorly written, lazy attempts to reinvent a franchise formula in the image of a man whose signature style is dirty, trashy movies. I have a soft spot for House of a Thousand Corpses, which I think is artistically bad, and I think Lords of Salem is the closest Rob has come to making an actual good movie, but I really do not like Halloween 2. The movie starts off very promising, with him replicating the hospital scene from the far superior Halloween 2, but then she wakes up and we find out the entire opening sequence is actually just a dream. Rob had found the level of brutality he wanted, and the opening hospital sequence was actually pretty suspenseful and scary. but instead of running with it and having a great movie, he decides to explore the riveting idea of whether writing a book makes the victims feel exploited. Possibly an interesting topic, but not in a slasher movie. It totally falls apart into pseudo-philosophical nonsense after that. Stick to the violent slashings next time, Rob. Number 10, Halloween 2007. Next up is the other Rob Zombie movie, one I think is slightly better than the sequel. I did a full video on this, so I will keep it brief. Telling the backstory of Michael undermines his character and makes him significantly less scary. Creating philosophical conflict for your villains can be a useful way to make them seem more complex, such as with Thanos or the Joker, but this is unnecessary in slasher movies. Taking 45 minutes to show Michael's white trash abusive family just so we can finally get around to the interesting stuff more than halfway through the movie makes it feel more than 10 times longer than it should be. Once Rob gets to where the original movie starts, it isn't all that bad. It isn't all that good either, and combined with forcing the audience to sit through 45 minutes of nauseating shaky cam child abuse, this movie is only above the absolute worst in the franchise. Number 9, Halloween Kills. Speaking of only being above the absolute worst in the franchise, Halloween Kills clocks in at number 9. The David Gordon Green sequel has some interesting ideas, and David has the good sense to put his camera on a fucking tripod, Rob, so the movie actually looks pretty decent. The flaws in this movie are that Laurie gets sidelined for almost all of it, and some of you Halloween superfans out there might be shouting, well, she gets sidelined for almost all of the second movie too, but you have that ranked much higher. This is kind of true, but the difference is everything that happens at the hospital in Halloween Kills feels like useless, wasted screen time. The plot goes nowhere except for David's ham-fisted, obvious attempt to tell the audience he feels mentally ill people are mistreated by society. Having Michael get beat up by a circle of angry vigilantes is a level of stupidity that's difficult to forgive, and frankly, I never really did. I do not like this movie. Number 8, Return of Michael Myers, aka Halloween 4. After the financially disastrous attempt to make the Halloween franchise an anthology series where a new story revolving around Halloween is told each movie, the studio wanted to go back to their roots and let the audience know Michael was back. What better way than to literally title the movie The Return of Michael Myers? The movie starts basically the same as the original, transferring a psych patient who escapes and goes on a killing spree. The characters are actually alright, and the sister is kind and compassionate, the total opposite of, say, Galadriel, who tries to leave one of her soldiers to die she's probably known for hundreds of years. Return of Michael Myers builds to the family doing something smart and trying to hide in a house by fortifying the house by nailing the windows shut and securing all the possible entrances, evolving into a siege-style movie that I am a huge sucker for, in the same way Elrond is a huge sucker for saying Galadriel's name really stupidly.
Galadriel.
Return ends up being a solid but not spectacular entry and falls solidly in the middle of the list. Number 7, Curse of Michael Myers. I talk about this movie in my best slashers of the 90s ranking video, so check that out if you're curious, but here is the summary. Curse introduces a man by the name of Paul Rudd, who is directed kind of strangely and ends up acting weird all movie, and the plot goes off the rails by explaining Michael Myers, a critical mistake made by Halloween 2007 as well. But this movie ends up pulling it off much better because it is so brazenly bizarre, it is kind of charming. There is far too much exposition.
Michael's work isn't done in Haddonfield. And soon.
They were
Very
symbols
soon.
carved out of stone or
Pieces of wood
used in
pagan
pagan
rituals
rituals
to
to
the most
demonic
future
represents
demon
that
of
spread
magic.
sickness.
According to
Destroyed
Celtic
legend,
legend,
one child
throughout
each
each
tribe
tribe,
hundreds of thousands
chosen
to be
kin
inflicted
of
by
the
cursed
Lord.
thorn. The sacrifice of anyone living in his house is his sparing the lives of an entire
The Druids
tribe.
were also great mathematicians and
Why are you
astronomers.
so concerned about us?
No
It's
still
not
out
like
the
this
constellation of
only
stars.
after killing his
People in this
From
town, they
time
want
to
us to
time,
believe he's
Halloween
dead, and
night.
I know. I've always known.
But despite all of that, the movie is unique enough to overcome its weaknesses and is one I actually enjoy quite a bit. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Number 6, Halloween Ends, aka definitely the last Halloween movie. Halloween Ends is not getting great critical or audience reviews, and I understand why. Much like Halloween 3, there is a huge discrepancy between what people are expecting and what they actually get with this movie. People want to see Michael slashing through teenagers, with maybe some kind of loose plot tying everything together. Halloween 2018 accomplishes this well. Halloween Kills accomplishes this poorly. Halloween Ends doesn't even bother trying to accomplish this at all. My major complaint with this movie is not their attempt to do something different and try and explore what makes someone evil, but rather they didn't go far enough. The movie is filled with half measures. For example, if you want to go the supernatural route, fully embrace it. They tease the mask as being supernaturally evil when the online vloggers take it to the insane asylum in the first movie, and the rest of the inmates go crazy. They walk the audience right up to the point of suggesting the mask is what makes Corey evil, but don't quite actually go there, which is a shame. They also wanted to write Michael out and have a new character take over the role of the Shape, but the producers clearly interfered and make David throw in a totally unnecessary fight between Michael and Laurie. This isn't even unexplored territory. I mean, the end of Halloween 4, the evil is transferred to Rachel, who then kills her own mother to parallel Michael killing his sister in the original. I don't know. I wish they would have had the guts to actually do one of these storylines, but overall the movie's alright. Much, much better than some at the bottom of this list. Number 5, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Halloween 3 tried to do something crazy and get rid of Michael Myers from the franchise completely, and head off in a brand new direction. Kind of like Galadriel, when she jumps off her ship in the middle of the ocean and starts swimming hundreds of miles back to shore. And like Galadriel, it was a poor choice. They are saved by the fact Halloween 3 is actually a good movie. If this movie had nothing to do with the Halloween franchise, it would probably be considered an underground 80s cult classic by now. In my mind, it still is. The plot is a bit laborious, and the main character is old-fashioned, aka misogynistic, but that's forgiven because the story is interesting enough and well enough paced to hold your attention throughout. Watching all of these movies in preparation for this video, I gotta say this movie was a breath of fresh air. Against all odds, Halloween 3 is among the best in the franchise. Number 4, Halloween 2018. The third movie in the series, named Halloween, is actually a very respectable entry in the franchise. I did a full video on this movie already, a running theme here I guess, and I talk a lot more about the mistakes and successes of this film there, so check it out. Overall, this movie creates quality, compelling characters, and then kills them off. That is the essence of what slasher movies should be, and elevates the movie to behind only the absolute best in the franchise. I won't deduct any points for the extremely disappointing Halloween kills, because in and of itself, Halloween 2018 is a very good slasher movie despite its flaws. There is some silly stuff here. I mean, nothing as silly as Galadriel blindly believing this guy is the king of an entire kingdom without realizing the family line was completely extinguished. I mean, you'd think it would be pretty common knowledge that an entire royal family who ruled the entire southern part of Middle-earth died off, especially to someone who's been alive for hundreds of years and was surely alive when it happened, but who knows. Anyway, Halloween 2018 is pretty good. Number 3, Halloween 20 years later, aka Halloween H2O, aka the third one again. This movie ignores everything after the original Halloween 2 and starts fresh. Remember the diagram? Doi, try to keep up, simpleton. The story is Laurie survived the hospital, has bad PTSD with intrusive thoughts and re-experiencing of the trauma, but is otherwise successful and works at a private school where her son, Josh Hartnett, is a student. All of the students go on a big field trip, but Josh and his girlfriend and another couple stay behind to hook up, and Michael shows up to punish them for sinfully having sex. This is a classic slasher setup, and the private school makes for a fun, unique location to have the slashings take place. There are just enough characters to kill off to be entertaining, but not so many the cast becomes bloated and we can't spend time getting to know anyone. Everyone is well developed, has traits which make them distinct, the kills are pretty interesting, and the movie ends with a great climax and resolution to Laurie and Michael's story. H2O is a real one and one of my favorite slashers. Number 2, Halloween 1978. The original movie checks in at number 2, probably a slightly controversial opinion. Now before you go all crazy, I have this movie at number 2 out of 13. I love this movie and I recognize everything it did to push horror and specifically slashers to where it is today. This movie is iconic, memorable, and very tightly paced and constructed. However, some of the stuff in this movie feels a bit dated. This is a hazard of being the movie everyone copies. On rewatch, it starts to feel a bit trite. It isn't, of course, because it created the blueprint other movies copied, but it feels a little bit stale watching it all these years later. It still has amazing directing, with Carpenter slowly exposing Laurie to Michael stalking her throughout her town, a very creepy way of building suspense that works masterfully. It still has good characters. Obviously Laurie is incredible and a great final girl, but also Annie and Linda are relatable and fun. And most of all, it has a creative ending where Michael escapes, is still alive, and all we see are a bunch of still shots. First of the house, and then of the surrounding neighborhood, letting the audience know he is still out there and could strike at any moment. What could be scarier than that? Halloween 1978 is an incredible film and falls just short of being the best in the franchise. Number 1. Halloween 2, 1981. Remember how I mentioned earlier I am a huge sucker for siege movies? Movies where a group of people are holed up somewhere and some external force is trying to infiltrate or otherwise overpower them? Halloween 2 combines this with a typical slasher movie and ends up being a ridiculous amount of fun. There are still creepy kills, with Michael slowly appearing onto frame from a shadow. There are still a bunch of really likable, great characters, but everything feels a little bit more modern in this movie. And Rick Rosenthal did a wonderful job mimicking the same aesthetic and feel of the first movie. They also make the genius decision to start this movie immediately after the first movie, to the point it is now hard for me to watch the first movie and not watch the second immediately after. If you've ever tried this, I think you'll come around to the idea of this being the more entertaining film. Like most great sequels, Halloween 2 takes advantage of the fact it doesn't need to spend any time on background and jumps right into the action. The hospital location lends itself to many, many fun kills and is a logical next step from the events of Halloween 1. I really, really like this movie. Not as much as Galadriel likes throwing temper tantrums and screaming at people, but I like it a lot. This is the kind of movie to lend fuel to the fire of a smoldering horror obsession.